basically anybody who felt like an outcast for whatever reason, whether it be their sexuality or their gender or whatever have you. And it was just a space where we could come together and participate in the art of competition for categories. Categories and trophies and money and all of that. Mainly in the beginnings of ballroom, it was more along the lines of just trophies and getting your name out there, which was the most important thing, as having someone, being someone of stature and status in our scene. That's where kind of like the groundwork started, and then it evolved into what we have today.
Mm-hmm. And someone reminded me to start recording, but I forgot to record. So I started recording about like halfway into that. But with the magic of editing, we'll do that like section again right at the end. For those people on YouTube who will be watching this video in like 5, 10, 15, 20 years, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, don't worry, Philip, whoever it was that said, "Are you recording?" Now I am recording. So thank you so much for that quick insight. And I think like a lot of people sort of see ballroom and they just think like voguing, right? Because that is the big thing right now. That's people's sort of like first entry into ballroom. I think my sort of exposure was this video from like 2013, like this street star dance competition, and it was like Inksy versus Lysandra, and then there was another one with Leomi. And I remember watching it and I was just like, what the hell is that? Because it was so my reality. So I never even thought about it. Then only years after that I came back to it and I was like, oh my God, that was Leomi. And I didn't even realize, I was just like a random person twirling and dropping hard onto the floor. So, so I want you to really tell us about like some of the other categories that perhaps we don't really know of. I think for me, like when you type in ballroom onto YouTube, you'll get like voguing, you'll get runway, you might get some face videos and maybe like a sex siren video. But like what else is there in addition to sort of the ones I said?
There were so many different categories over the years, over the last like 50 or so years of ballroom. And one thing about it was that it was so creative. You had your main categories: face, realness, runway, voguing, and fashion, and things like that. But you also had things like hair affair, to who had the biggest over the top hairdo. You had butch queen up in pumps, where the butch queens would put on these high heels and strut back and forth, up and down the runway. Those were a lot of the categories that were very, very, very creative. You had a category called team battle, where you had one person who walked face, one person who walked runway, and one person that walked performance. They would all come together and create a team. And, you had a whole lot of different categories that there were, over the last 50 years. Let's see, there was a lot of them. Oh my gosh.
So there's some in the comment section. So Christoph is saying there was Designer's Delight, Fat Out, there was
y'all know.
Cunt in a Box, Bizarre,
Bizarre, there's so many different ones. And the thing about it is, as ballroom has evolved and we appear to be more visible as a ballroom community, a lot of that stuff is not even had anymore. You know what I mean? And it's truly unfortunate, because you have so many people that have paved the way for those particular categories. Shout out to Labelina and Christian Bazaar and Eric Christian Bazaar, you know what I mean, who are prominent figures in those categories. You know what I'm saying? I just feel like a lot of the glitz and glamour, especially, over here in the US, is just gone. Somebody just said Perfect 10. Yes, Perfect 10. I mean, that's a category that they still have today, but a lot of the categories are like, have been done away with. And a lot of the glitz and the glamour and the creativity has kind of like went along with it.
Don't worry, Niambi, we're going to have plenty of time to talk about where we are now. I know you have some thoughts. I know a lot of people have thoughts about where ballroom is now compared to where it was. So, like, as I said at the start, like, this is a space to really explore where it was, how it developed, where it is now, to really take you on that story. Someone also said there's a category called Thug Femme Queen. Have you heard of that?
Thug Femme Queen. I don't know that if I've heard of that one. I do know that they used to have a category I used to walk personally all the time was Femme Queen, Voguing Butch, where the Femme Queens would come out and vote like Butch Queen. I used to walk that because I'm a heavy fan of the old way. So I liked a lot of the precision in it. So I used to walk that a lot. But Thug Femme Queen, I don't think I've ever heard.
Thank you so much for that. And so, like, as I said before, like, people, like, make notes of these, like, categories, go search them up. Like, don't just be searching voguing. Type in face, type in, like, runway, type in performance with hands, etc. Like, really go on these clips and get to know these people. Because there's some incredible creative people in this scene.
Yes, Facebook performance. That's another one. Face over 30, face over 40. Like a lot of those categories are just like, what happened to them.
Yeah. And another question I had for you, this is like a little fun question. So I don't think people realize like how far ballroom has penetrated. And even the language that we use today has its origins in ballroom because it was created by queer people of color, Black and Latinx trans women. So as a fun little task, I thought you could share some ballroom lingo with us. So I'm going to share one of mine, which, as obviously this word has exploded everywhere, which is tea, right? Like, spill that tea, what's the tea? I know, the straight white people, they ruin everything. They take the fun out of the language. So what are some words that we should know, like lingo, that we might recognize?
Shade and fears. Like the thing about it is a lot of the times, like in our community, it's more of the inflections in our voice and how we use them, which determine whether something is positive or negative. For instance, I'll use fears. Fears in the kind of Caucasian scene and like Tyra's Next Top Model, they kind of use fears as something like, "Oh, mama, you look fierce." That's, as a positive thing. In the ballroom scene, fierce is not a good thing. Mm-hmm. So if somebody says that you look fierce, be offended because no. Because
Niambi, I am guilty of using fierce. Now I know it's the wrong way to use it, so I'm gonna try and not let Tyra Banks into my head. And I'm gonna try and stop using it. I'll find a replacement. There's this one phrase that because again, a lot of my knowledge about ballroom is just from like clips, right? And a lot of the clips that I watch are from like the early 90s, late 90s. And there's this one video, I think Keisha Ebony got chopped and she thought it was shade from Ashley. And the commentator was just like, pay it, you're a legend, pay it. And I just love that phrase so much because it's like, it encompasses so much and there's so much emotion and feeling behind it. And it's like, if someone said, pay it to me, I'd be like, you're right, I should pay it, because it's behind it. And I feel like, you're right, it's about the inflection, like how is it coming across? So that's why when a non-queer person of color tries to use it, it just kills it. They don't have the same energy because they don't have the same lived experience to put that energy into
it. Right. Yep. Yeah. So with fierce, she would be like, "Oh yeah, mama, you look fierce." But if you hear it in the ballroom aspect or in our scene, it'd be like, "Oh, she looks fierce." Do you see the difference? That that R is taken out and you're like, like you're disgusted. So that's basically how that it was being used in our, that how it would
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that was just a bit of an insight for those people who didn't really know much about ballroom or not really understand what it was. And so I really hope that has helped you. So I really want to take us to the beginning, in terms, because I've heard like different things that people say like ballroom started from the drag scene in the 1920s or like the 1940s, or some people say like or like voguing specifically, people are like that started in the prisons, and like some people say, oh, it came from like LA when the whacking scene was evolving. So there's all these like different streams of where people say it's from. Okay, so it's no association with whacking. Niambi's eyes don't associate it with whacking. So please do like tell us like where is, or like not just voguing, but like ballroom as we know it today. What are the origins of that? What decade did it start?
Well, I would the first cataloged era. That's a shout out to all of the people in ballroom that kind of assist me in ballroom history that were out before me. Derek Ebony and Jamal Milan. Those are very prominent figures in the scene that were out, before me, that kind of give me, my history lesson, and and the ability to pay it forward. For the first era that I am aware of, based off of them, is the 60s, is the late 60s, which started the white era. Before that, it really wasn't as ballroom as we know it today. It was something else that evolved into what we now know as ballroom. A lot of it was, trans women performing, and, a lot of performance and more pageantry. Thank you, Christoph. It was more pageantry. It was nothing like how we know it today. It kind of evolved into
that. And I guess like you sort of touched on this before, like giving us a bit of an insight when you were saying this about like fun, community escapism, because that was your experience with ballroom when you got into it. And just to sort of expand on that, like why was sort of ballroom created? What did it provide people with? Because we very much associate it with like low income, queer people of color, like Black and Latinx trans women. Like why was ballroom there? What did it do?
Well, the main thing that ballroom created for everybody that went to it and got attracted by the energy was family. Family came first. And a lot of us did not have that. A lot of us were put out for whatever reasons. A lot of us were, our families didn't necessarily, agree or support the lifestyle the lifestyle that we were living, whether it be transitioning or, our sexuality or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And, it was family. You know what I mean? And I think that that's one of the elements, like, as you said, that we'll get into that, later on. But that was the basis and the foundation of what ballroom was and what ballroom is supposed to be. You know what I mean? Because everything kind of branches off of the family. That's how you get houses and all of the different things, because it's under the family dynamic.
And just to expand on that, because I heard someone saying that like the full name of like ballroom is like ballroom and houses or something like that. So I was hoping you could sort of just tell us a bit more about like houses and like the structure of a house, and sort of what did it mean to be part of a house, and what did it mean to be a mother or a father of a house.
Well, it's kind of changed throughout history. The trans women, the mothers, were the foundation and the rock of the entire house. They were they were revered, and the providers and the caretakers, and a lot of what you see on Pose as of now runs true. You know what I mean? And shout out to them, because they, to me, came the closest of what my real lived experience. You know what I'm saying? And, with living, a whole bunch of us up underneath the house, and then we would get dressed for balls, do whatever we had to attend these balls. You know what I mean? Because of, the lack of resources or whatever have you. That's pretty much what it was. It just came down to to family and being there for each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the parents actually, and shoot, half of the parents that were out there were freaking babies themselves. You know what I'm saying? And they were, kind of thrusted into the position based off of the experience that they had in the scene, not their actual age.
And just sort of like, just to expand and sort of like where it all started, so I mentioned earlier how like we're going to be mentioning a lot of names and we want people to sort of make note of these names and do their own research on these names. So who would you say are like the names that we need to know from this era, and very much like who are the pioneers of ballroom from this era?
Paris Dupree. If you haven't seen Paris is Burning, I suggest you watch that. Because when I came out in 1992, that was kind of like the foundation of everything for me. From the music to the participation in ballroom to the categories to what everything is or was, and even not just inside of ballroom, but outside of ballroom as well. Just the scene in general. If you want a basis, watch Paris is Burning. Paris Dupree, most definitely, Octavia St. Laurent, and a lot of the names that I'm going to be mentioning are in that, in that documentary. And I'm pretty sure Jenny Livingston had no idea that it would turn into what it is today, just for our scene in general. But these are a lot of names. Ira Aphrodite and Stuart Ebony. These were people that were very young in that era, but are still pioneers of our scene. You know what I mean? There's, oh my gosh, there's so many. Candy LaBeija, Jennifer Legend, Tracy Africa. These are all that you need to know who Tracy Africa is. She's just not, the trans woman, who got slighted and all of this stuff that you're seeing now of her. You know what I mean? She has a long legacy that goes back a lot of years. And she's still here today. You know what I mean? Which is very important because, a lot, and there's a lot of people in our scene that come into this life, go through whatever problems that they have, go into the scene, and then they're gone without even knowing their name. You know what I mean? Or everything that they put forth. So you know what I mean? That is why I am the way that I am about ballroom history. Willie Ninja, yes, thank you, Philip. There's so many people in our scene that at the time, didn't get the adulation and the applause and the accolades that they deserved until after they're gone, which is so unfortunate with our scene. But yeah, there's just I could go on and on. Moldavia LaBeija. I could go on and on about the people in our scene. The extravaganzas, yes, the entire house of extravaganza. Yeah.
And I think that point that you made about how like people can sort of go through like ballroom, like from when they started to when they got what they needed and then leave, and then not even know the people who paved the way for them or even created the structure for them to then go into something, develop and take something from it. And I think it is really unfortunate that we have lost a lot of people. But as you said, there are still people here, I remember I found Leah Richards' Facebook and I was like, I didn't know she was still here, because if I go on YouTube, there's like videos of her from 1992, and then there's like one interview from like 2013 that she did, and then I was just like typing more. I think I found your friend list. I was like typing in names. So I was like finding like Letitia, like Alyssa, like all these names, and it's sort of like they're still here and they should still be celebrated. Like love should be shown to them because they enabled all of this for us, right? Like this interview would not be happening if it wasn't for people like that.
Absolutely.
So like as much as I've said
it's so funny to mention that they are both very, very, very influential in my life. So shout out to both of them.
So another quick question. I think we have to sort of ask this question quite soon because I know that people are hungry for it. This is going to be a question about voguing, which I think a lot of the participants participate in. So I want to know, like, how did voguing start and what was its format? Because I think right now people very much associate it with, this is going to be a really bad rendition of voguing, but like, you know what I mean? Like the 5 elements, like right? That's what they associate it with. But what did voguing look like as it was just starting out? And was it even called voguing? What was it called?
Well, as far as I know, it's always been called voguing. It's very argumentative on who started it. You know what I mean? That's the whole politics of ballroom. As far as I know, it was very Paris Dupree. It could have been before her, after her, but as far as I know, that is where it originated. I think we had this conversation on our pre-interview. It was like It was like 3 people, 3 people, a combination of 3 people. I heard the story about the jail before, but yeah. As far as I know, it was Paris Dupree, and it's just evolved. The old way has been, very prevalent. Like I said, I'm a big fan of the old way. A lot of the lines and the precision that's involved in it. I think as time went on into the 80s and 90s, it got more precise, because if you watch the old way in Paris is Burning and then watch, maybe some of the 90s videos on YouTube, it's 2 different styles of the old way, but they're still both called the old way. Then so basically, yeah, it was, the old way was kind of like the basis for everything. The femme queens even had a touch of old way in their performance. That's where I get a lot of my views and things from. They incorporated a lot of the old way, only it was a lot more feminized. And then let's see. Oh, I don't want to get too far ahead, but
yeah, we'll get there.
I'll be off to the right.
We'll be talking about the 2000s in a minute. But we'll get to that era. I think it's just something about when you said about how like there's 2 different like versions of old way that you might find. Just like a quick funny story for people watching. I found this clip from a latex ball, and it was like an old way battle. And to me, it sort of looked like, because as you said, like there's one version it's all about like the style and the precision and the lines. Then there's another one where it's a bit more like gritty, a bit more physical, right?
Yes.
And there was this one clip that I was watching, and it looked like this guy was just trying to wrestle the other one. And I was like, this is an old way. Like, I get you're meant to lock, but like you're meant to lock with style, right? It has to fit the music, but this just looked like he was trying to squash him. And so I said it to Niambi, and I was like, Niambi, should he be chopped for this? Like, this doesn't look right. And I was like, why is no one saying anything? And then people's faces in the audience were just like shocked. And so that's why I was like, I went to you for the knowledge and you gave it to me. So you're going to find 2 different versions of Old Way out there, because again, like, as you said, the style, precision, the lines came later.
Yes. Yeah. The style, the precision of the lines and everything. But then you do have locking, and in the spirit of competition, especially with, old time, old way, it's like whoever gets the best of the other person. So, you know what I mean? A lot of old way, battles ended in fights, of course. But and you got to expect that when you're doing, you got some, your whole arm around somebody's head, and you got the leg lock and all of this other stuff. But for all intents and purposes, it's the spirit of competition. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you win by any means necessary. You win.
I think there's this other video that I watched. It was Salvin versus Stanley Milan. And I think like when Salvin was trying to lock Stanley, like he put his leg like over his neck or something.
Yeah.
And then like Stanley's friend immediately came on and was like, he almost broke his neck. And then Salvin was like, he got locked, he stopped. That's not on me. I've been doing the old way for a long time. And then the friend was like, you know how the old way girls are, like how they treat the new way girls. So it was just that's what the memory came to mind when I think like you do whatever is necessary, like as you said.
Yeah, and another thing, like with that, like that's why I'm really not a fan of the whole like open to all thing. You know what I mean? Because it makes it difficult for you to appreciate each individual style because you don't have two people with the same style voting against each other. You know what I mean? It's like one style is over here, and then this other style is totally different. So who do you give it to? You know what I mean? You don't know. They're both the best at what they do. You know what I'm saying? So I really don't think that it's fair for if an old way is battling a new way person and that old way blocks them. You know what I mean? They're not, that's not their style. You know what I'm saying? And so it just makes it a little difficult, especially from a judging perspective, to kind of like, like which one do I choose? I just think that, the old way they have different categories for a reason. So why would they like try to like push everything together? That's just my opinion, but
Yeah. Just quickly, so I said to the audience at the start, that for my own sanity, just to concentrate, I won't be taking any questions as we move along. But actually, I found that I can look at the chat box pretty easily and still stay focused. So if anyone does have questions as we move along, like I do have an eye on the chat. I thought I would struggle having eyes in two places, but it's not that hard. So if you have a question as we move along, just like say it in the chat and I will see it. There's also like a Q&A button, but that's like another button that I need to then press to look at it. So just use the chat because that's what I can just look at. I didn't do anything. Megan,
somebody just triggered me. Somebody just triggered me and asked me about.
No, Niambi, don't process that. We'll get to it. So like keep your questions relevant to sort of the bit that we're currently talking about. And then we're going to go through like all the periods. So your question might get answered anyway as we move along, but then we'll have a section at the end just for people's questions. So, like all your miscellaneous questions that you have, we will go through it. So Megan, don't stress. We will get to your question.
Yes, yes, we will, Megan.
Just a quick question. Amani, we're going to get to that question, don't you worry. But a question from Phoenix is, I don't know how much knowledge you have on this particular category, but they're asking, what is the history of trans men of color in ballroom? And are there any categories for trans men of color?
Okay, now here's the thing about the trans men. When I was coming up in the scene, trans men weren't called trans men; they were called butches, and they did have butch categories. They did have categories for the butches. Basically, all of the same categories that you would see for the butch queens and the femme queens, the butches and the women also had categories as well, from face to runway to performance. The thing about it is with those particular categories, there was not a lot of participation. So like maybe like one or two people would participate. So, it wasn't looked at as seriously as say the butch queens or femme queens because of the lack of participation.
Yeah. And so a quick question from Zena was about were there any sort of categories dedicated to queer women, like lesbians, or like what sort of role did lesbians play in the ballroom community, if there was?
Well, there really wasn't, because as far as the women goes, it really wasn't about sexuality. If you were a woman in ballroom, it was automatically assumed that you were gay and you were in heart the scene with us. So it really wasn't, there really wasn't a label as far as, sexuality goes. Inside a ballroom, it was just assumed that you were a part of our community if you were a woman that participated.
Mm-hmm. And just as I think maybe if we move into sort of the next era, which I'm sort of pretty excited for. So as we move into, I think you called it like the red era or the bloodline era, what changes did ballroom experience? And like, what were the dates of this era?
Well, the inception of the butch queens and femme queens and the categories, how we know, that we know of, today. The red era was also the inception of Paris is Burning. So, you guys watch that movie because you'll get a lot of insight on who the red era is through that movie. I forget the years. I'm not on Learning History right now, so I forget the year span. But yeah, it was basically the late '70s, early '80s. You know what I mean? Around that era. Um, yeah, it was basically. Now, see, I wasn't there. This is why I look to my, Jamal, my Jamal. Shout out to you, and and different people that helped me along the way that were out around in that era. Doing the damn thing and being out there and participating and stuff like that because they actually paved the way for eras to follow. You know.
Mhm. And just a question. This is a question I'm going to ask as we move through every era.
Yeah.
And like, who are the names that we should know from this era? Like, who are the trendsetters? Because as the sort of names, it's like the bloodline. Like, this is where sort of like families and houses are sort of like really formed. I'm guessing. To start the
Yes,
legacies.
all of the Moldavias, the Alyssas, the Letitias, um, 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 R. Chanel, I believe, is in that era as well. There are so many names that are in this era. You guys head over to learnyourhistory.net. I'm getting ready to update the website with more faces because the faces that I have up there now have been up there since the inception. So I'm going to be updating with different faces from the different eras, as I update the website. Thank you, Ciora. Yes, and I'll be updating the website. As I go along, to update the different faces and stuff like that. So, but yeah, there's so many names. But the red era is the era before mine, and actually kind of like the era that kind of raised me in a way.
Hmm.
That definitely raised me because I always look to the older. You know what I mean? I was raised by my grandmother, so I always look to the elder. You know what I mean, for insight and advice and different things like that. So shout outs to the red era.
And yeah, someone wrote in the chat just the link. So it's learnyourhistory.net.
Yes.
So if you're watching this in 2032, hopefully the webpage is still up. And maybe in 30, 40 years, it should still be up. So God knows what, it'll probably be like hundreds of names on there by then.
Yeah.
So if you're watching this in 40 years' time, hi. And we have a question. Are there any House of Princess members we should know about, particularly feminine?
Michael Princess, yes, Michael Princess. Unfortunately, he was taken away from us not too long ago. Rest in peace to him. He is the all it be Erskine Christian. Google him, look him up. Junior LaBeija, who also made an appearance. It's so funny. These three gentlemen was the actual. The picture of these three gentlemen was the first picture that I had for Learn Your History. Learn Your History turned 6 years old this year, and that was the first picture that I had was of those three gentlemen. Erskine and Michael, just the staple of Butch Queen Phase, who kind of ushered the category in, to its popularity. So definitely shout outs to them. And Michael will miss you.
Thank you so much for that. Sarah, there's a question from Sarah, but we're going to get to your question, Sarah. Don't worry. We're going to take you through like a timeline, so don't you worry. So this era, like, is obviously like reflected in Pose, and is very much centering this stories of people who are affected by AIDS. And obviously Ballroom, the demographics of Ballroom, it is largely like low income, queer people of color. And as we've seen, like in this current pandemic, like those are the communities that are most affected. So I just want to I know this wasn't your era and you weren't really part of that era, but you still felt the effects when you came into the scene in 92. But
yes.
During like the sort of 80s, late mid 80s, 90s, early 90s, how did the AIDS crisis sort of impact the ballroom community?
Oh, and oh, please, in a very, very, very prominent way. You know what I mean? Because when you have lack of family, when you have lack of support, when you have lack of resources, it's basically sex, drugs, and rock and roll. basically. And it was like that for me as a kid, even coming out in 92, not much had changed. You know what I mean? And it was very, you're partying in the club one night and, and seeing somebody, and then 3 days later, they're this thin, and then the next week they're gone. And that's basically, what I want to get out to everybody, how serious that living in that time was. You know what I mean? And it really hurts because you create these connections and these and this family with these people, and they're just gone. You know what I mean? You create these relationships and then just gone. And I can't even count on my hands how many people that I've, next year it'll be my 30th anniversary in Ballroom. And I can't even count on my hands how many people that I have gotten close to and lost. And it puts me in a mood sometimes, but I just try to live life like they're still here with me. You know what I mean? And that's that's kind of like my coping mechanism on how I get through that. You know what I mean? But there have been a lot of people, you know what I mean? And it's crazy. Oftentimes I think about, like, with all of the things that, all of the advances that we have made in HIV/AIDS, if they were still here, to be able to benefit off of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And a lot of these deaths I feel could have been prevented. You know what I mean? But what can you do? What can you do? And I always kind of try to live like they're still with me.
And I think, like, it also just sort of reinforces, like, why it is so important. Like, people get to know those names and, like, learn about that history, because we are sort of, by participating in Ballroom or being in proximity to Ballroom, that is their legacy, right? That you're now enjoying. And, like, some people perhaps even capitalizing off Ballroom, right?
So
if you well, we'll get there, Niambi. But even in just even if, like, someone is just teaching, like, a ballroom class, right? So, like, I know that there's a lot of people in this room who participate in the ballroom scene in, like, different spaces in Europe, right? And sort of, it could be like a whole world away from the origins in New York, but that is still where it comes from. And it's sort of like, we have a duty upon ourselves to learn about these people and keep their legacy and their memories alive. And I think, as I mentioned before, like, we are still fortunate to have names from that era who are still with us, right? And like Niambi, as you said, like, that wasn't really your era, and, like, but you learned from the people from that era, and these people are still out there. So I think if you are someone who's participating in Ballroom, or, like, part of a house in, like, I don't know, like Germany or Finland, etc., like, message Niambi, find these people, and they can give you a history lesson for your community wherever you may be. Like, these people are still alive and they can still share so much, and it's up to us to keep that alive. So that's what I'm going to say to all the people just watching now. And I just also
join the Ballroom Worldwide group on Facebook. You'll see a lot of history in there. It's not just on the Learn Your History. There's Ballroom Worldwide on Facebook that you could join. Shout out to Lee Soldier for creating that group. Hope you get well soon. He created that group, and there's so much history, and you can really, really learn about the cultures from joining these ballroom groups. You know what I mean? And photos and pictures and images from even before that I was out, from the beginnings of Ballroom. You can find out all of that knowledge. You just have to choose to, want to learn about it.
And someone said in the chat, like, these talks and discussions need to happen, especially where, like, the living icons and legends are still with us. And that was very much, like, why I started this, because I realized, like, the content and, like, all the archives very much ended on YouTube around 2014. And I was like, why is there no continuation? Like, these people are still here. And it's sort of like, and it was really sad to, like, lose people in that gap between 2014 and 2020. And those stories, like, we can hear those stories, like, through other people, but we can no longer hear those stories directly from them. So it's all sort of need to reach out to them and provide platforms and spaces for them. And like, as I said, like, even like in this 2-hour event that we're doing now, we could talk for 24 hours, you know, just about probably a handful of categories. We can go that deep into it. And it's sort of, that's why I say, like, don't let this event just be the end. Don't let it be like, okay, I know about ballroom now. I know where it started. I know I know the keywords and phrases. Like, no, you need to do more research and keep it alive. And I very much invite people, if you are across the world and feel like probably disconnected to the New York scene or like the Philadelphia scene, etc., you can still do a Zoom call, right? And then once this pandemic is over, invite these living legends, these living icons to teach the community that you have built in your specific region. Like, keep these memories and these stories alive, because this interview wouldn't be happening. Your ballroom scene in Estonia would not exist without those names that Niambi mentioned.
One thing too I want to say is that once you do learn your history, it's important to pay it forward. It's very important to pay it forward to those that are coming up, because ballroom is not going anywhere, and it's becoming more and more and more and more and more visible, and people are starting to participate. You're seeing it everywhere now. So it's very important that once you learn the origins of ballroom, pay it forward to someone else who doesn't. So yeah, that's all I want to say. But go ahead.
Just on that, we have like this really good question. So someone said they are one of the few people in the ballroom scene in Africa, and they want to know, like, how do we build an authentic scene and really like pioneer the culture? Because when people reference ballroom from places such as Drag Race, that's not really the vibe. And so it's important for them to create an authentic scene. So like, how do you go about creating an authentic scene? And I guess it's very much like as what I sort of said, but what would you sort of add to that? What does authenticity look like?
The best way to create an authentic scene is by researching the history and knowing where it comes from. Because it's more than movements, it's more than voguing, there's a whole entire culture behind what we do. And once you realize why that is, then you're in a position to be able to teach somebody else.
Mm-hmm. And I think so I'm gonna ask the question, and I didn't know where to fit this into the schedule, but it's something I really wanted to ask. And it's like something that we spoke about like for really like a time beforehand. It is about like, who is ballroom for, right? Because I've sort of had things where people would say like, unless you're a queer person of color, you're not allowed to participate, or you can be a queer person of color or LGBT and a woman and you can participate, but if you're not part of that, then you can't participate. And I think I remember speaking to Alyssa briefly, and she was sort of saying that like, ballroom is for everyone, and from the beginning it was very diverse. But it brings the question of, if you are going to participate in a culture which was pioneered by Black trans women, like queer people of color, like low income communities, and perhaps maybe you're capitalizing off that culture or profiting in some way, sort of, what do you, if you're sort of participating in a culture which was built by these people, what do you then need to do, right? So like, what does that authenticity then look like? What do you do to give back, knowing that you are essentially not originally part of that group who created it?
Well, like I said, I just have to go back to the history aspect of it. But what I will say is that ballroom is for everybody, but it's being aware and conscious of, where it comes from and why this, was ushered in. Now, when I came out in 92, I guess that was, it was because of my environment. You know what I mean? I didn't see too much diversity. You know what I mean? Especially at that time frame. I did. It was basically people of color. You had very, 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 very little, but then ballroom was also a lot smaller too. It only consisted of New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, like, that little corridor. Then Atlanta opened up, and then Miami opened up, and then Chicago and then the Midwest opened up. And that is where I think a lot where it became more diverse. You know what I mean? The more it grew in other places, it's going to, become more diverse. Which is, the same way with, international. You know what I mean? As ballroom grows, of course, it's going to get more diverse. But when I first came out in '92, it wasn't as diverse. It was nowhere near as diverse as it is now. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I would say that the main thing is to research how all of this originated. You know what I mean? So you're not out here appropriated, because there's a lot of that going on. There is a lot of that going on. And, you have people appropriating slang terms and this and that. Like, someone who has no idea what ballroom is can decide that they want to wake up tomorrow and throw a ball. You know what I mean? And they have no idea what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? And that, that is unfortunate. So I do believe that I don't want to use a harsh word like policing, but I do want to, have ballroom be a place where it can be protected from all of this. You know what I mean? And when it's seen, to call it out when it happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think like someone just mentioned, like, the difficulty in sort of keeping that authenticity when the cultural context of that scene would be so different. Like, I don't know too much about scenes, but like the scene in Russia, I'm guessing, I mean, I don't know how many brown people are in Russia, but it doesn't strike as culturally diverse, And so I think it's sort of that question of, if you do have people who are not people of color, if you're not necessarily queer, but there's something about ballroom that brings you into that space, it's sort of, how do you sort of keep it real?
Niambi, I'm sorry, I read a comment. Someone said appropriation versus appreciation, and I just lost it. Thank you, Crystal, for that, because that's exactly what it is. That is exactly what it's more than just movements. I mean, voguing is nice. I've been doing it for, over 2 decades, and it's nice. But there is a whole world inside of ballroom. There are people that come into ballroom, want to vogue so bad. They've seen a couple videos on YouTube. You know what I mean? They participate in a few balls, and they think that they made it, and then they're done with ballroom. You know what I mean? Ballroom is not trash. It is a rich culture of people that is more than just, out there for your entertainment.
And there's just one other question. Were there any Asians part of ballroom in the beginning, or did they join later on? And I'm assuming it's not kind of my Asian, because my Asian did not migrate to the US in that. I think they were there, but it was very, very small. We're mostly concentrated in England. So I'm guessing like East Asian, Southeast Asian communities.
Yes, and I can only think of 2. I'm sorry, his name escapes me, but he was in my house. Forgive me, I cannot think of his name. But it was him and Misha Milan. Those are the only Asian folks that I was aware of in the scene. But the thing about it is that even if we might have not had, race or cultural background in common, we had the fact that we were a part of, the scene for sexuality or transition, or because our parents threw us out. We had other things in common, and those were the things that brought us together. You know what I'm saying? Those were the things that, that we had in common.
And just quickly, just a quick shout out to something. So, about the AIDS, there's like a show called It's a Sin, and it explores like the AIDS epidemic in Britain, like mostly in London, with some scenes in New York, and that's been getting like rave reviews to give an insight into how AIDS affected the community. Yeah, I will send it to you. It's called It's a Sin. So It's a Sin. Go check it out. It gives like a really good insight into what it was like and how it impacted people. So back to the question of the hour, which is again like voguing, because I feel like that's an inescapable question, but it is something that there's still a lot of history in voguing that we can talk about.
Absolutely.
So in this era, like how did voguing change, and what was sort of the perceptions of voguing during this period?
Okay, now the migration from red to black, I came in kind of like the beginning of the black era, which was 92. And, you had Femme Queen performance, you had Butch Queen performance. Butch Queen Vogue Femme came a little later than that, but you had Femme Queen performance, which was very, very, very soft and dainty and woman-like. It was about selling your feminine features. Um, it was very, very, very about femininity. I'm about to get distracted in a moment. My nephew's getting ready to come in, but I'll try to keep it together. But yeah, it was all about selling your femininity. Um, and just feeling your effervescence. A lot of times, it was this known rule that femme queens backs weren't supposed to touch the floor, and you had to be regal and absolutely feminine like.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So
And just quickly on that line about how like you're not a femme queen is not meant to touch their back on the floor. I
yeah.
said that to Alyssa, and Alyssa went straight in there and like, that's my line, that was my line. So I have to pay credit where it's due. So Alyssa was the one that very much pioneered like a femme queen's back should not touch the floor. So I had to throw it in there before she comes for you.
no, she is definitely one of my inspirations and one of the ones who I grew up watching. And it was amazing in 1998 that I had gotten a chance to compete against her on the floor. And for me, like it was just like the for me that other than receiving my icon award, that was the kind of like the epitome of my career. I've had a few, but my battle with her and my battle with Sanaya were like my the quintessential, like the epitome of my ballroom career. And you would think that, it wasn't even about, who won or who lost. It was the fact that I got a chance to dance with her. You know what I mean? And it was wonderful. So I will always look at Alyssa as a person of great influence to me.
And Alyssa's videos on YouTube are honestly incredible. Like, I think I was speaking to like Venus Mizrahi, and I think she described Alyssa as like the feminine supreme or like the supreme queen of femininity. Like she really drove that. Like she is the pioneer of like feminine
Yes.
And also a quick question. So it started off like as like performance, like pop, dip, and spin. So sort of when did New Way come in? Was this
New Way around? If I can recall, I'm not really sure if it was really happening like that before that. But I was seeing a lot of New Way around 92, 93. A lot of the stretching, a lot of the acrobats. Acrobatics, but the Butch Queens were doing it. It was nothing that the femme queens, at that time had time for. They're like, they would be sitting there, spectating, that category or outside getting ready for their category. It was all about, glitz and glamour and glitter with the trans women of back then. You know what I mean? But as I can recall as soon it could very well have been out before me, but that was definitely one of the first categories I saw in my inception in '92 was old way, new way, and feminine performance.
And in terms of New Way, like who are the names that we should know? Because the names that I know are only from like 2000s onwards. I don't really know like the old school people.
Derek Extravaganza, Stanley Milan, those are two that just come to me just like that. Alfie Revlon. He's no longer here with us. You may see a few videos of him. Think that if he was still here today, he would definitely be an icon in our scene. Is for that category. There's so many, but those are my time. Jose Revlon, yes, thank you. The Milans and the Revlons as a house. There is this one video. I'm not sure if it's still on there. I'm sure it is. Where the Revlons came out in like this neon, or they were all in neon, and they were all voguing the new way. It was everything. Please research that ball. I'll get the specifics about it. Reach out to me in my inbox. I'll give it to you. But yeah, those were my early recollections of what new way was. The extravaganzas, the Milans and the Revlons.
And just like a quick question. This is unrelated to what we were just talking about, but it came in. And it's about like the terminology of femme queen. So someone said, is a femme queen and a trans woman the same thing? Or is like femme queen a title that you earn through like participation? And what you give them?
Femme queen to me is basically a trans woman. That is what we called femme queens from back in the day. You know what I'm saying? Back in the day, it wasn't until advocacy kind of meshed together with ballroom, and now we have all of these, politically correct terms. Yeah, femme queen, and trans women are basically the same thing. Yeah, Crystal says femme queen was the precursor to trans women. Yes, exactly right.
Because I think I remember seeing this video that Tyra Allure did, which I think most people know as Dominique Jackson. Did I get the surname right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine if I didn't. So yeah, I think she was saying how she didn't like the term femme queen, and it should be like trans woman, or like women of trans experience. And I guess, like, as you said, like, when advocacy plays a role, and again, like, the decades change, and we're talking about, like, the 80s, 90s, and language changes. So it'll be interesting to sort of see, because I think I still see titles, but like femme queen is used, like FQ is used in the title. So it'll be interesting to see if that changes.
Yeah, and I think it's also depending on who you ask. Because me personally, I love femme queen. I love everything about it. I was raised on it. And femme queen. Using the term femme queen kind of protected the fault. Right. Just, you took the words right out of my mouth, Crystal. It was a part of the culture. So outside of ballroom, no, you wouldn't be, you wouldn't refer to, a trans woman or anybody, as femme queen. But that was one of the things that protected our culture. Like, you wouldn't call a gay man a butch queen. You know what I mean? A lot of them can't stand that term. But in the ball, that is what kind of, separated ballroom from everything and everyone else. You know what I mean? So, yeah, honey, I love them. I love the term femme queen. Call me a femme, honey. I love it.
Another question, just to quickly go back to like what we were talking about, like in the red era and the blonde line era. So the show Pose is out, and it was out like a few years ago, and it started off like within that era.
Yes.
And I think I remember seeing like one comment about like the authenticity of Pose and how well it reflects reality. And I think someone said like there's no way Blanca can be in like a 4-bed apartment in the heart of New York. Like, that wasn't the reality back then. So sort of how well does Pose, would you say, reflect the reality from that era?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say it again. Pose is the closest thing, because everything before Pose was not to me at all accurate. You know what I mean? In displaying our, displaying our lives and how we live. And the thing about it is, Blanca's Place, it was absolutely realistic, and it was realistic for a lot of people, because you had a whole bunch of people in one house and everybody was contributing. You know what I mean? And yeah, it was a 4-bedroom apartment, but it wasn't the best looking 4-bedroom apartment either. You know what I'm saying? So it was definitely possible, and it was definitely things that were, it was definitely realistic because it was, it was a lot of people's stories. You know what I mean? You had trans women in there, with sex work. You had, drug dealers. Everybody had their own way of survival. You know what I'm saying? So when you have all of that needing to survive in one place, yeah, we can make it. We can make it barely, but we're going to make it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that's what it is. And a lot of that stuff was taught, through influence. You know what I mean? I'm sure, the poppies out there, didn't think about selling drugs in the beginning, but you have to do what you had to do. And a lot of the stuff that we all went through was because of survival. You know what I mean? Was out of survival, not because we wanted to, or not because, it's because we had to. Because if we didn't, did y'all not see Damon in the beginning of the pose when his parents kicked him out? He was sleeping in the park. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Until Blanca came along. You know what I'm saying? And that is the life of a lot of us.
Yeah. So I think if anyone hasn't seen Pose, please do go check it out. I know that it's on Netflix in the UK. It may also be in the US and worldwide as well at this point. And so, yeah, Christoph said, like, a reality lost to the current era, who was raised in relative acceptance.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to have ballroom, kind of open up and have this big thing, because now you have people from all different types of backgrounds, all different types of privilege, and all different types of things, as to where the guts and the foundation of ballroom is not in that. You know what I'm saying? So that's where a lot of, like, I see that you're in ballroom, but you can't identify with me on another level, or the level that I come from. So I think that's where a lot of the anger, comes in from, how we, that authentic ballroom, and, that the culture back then, as opposed to now. You know what I'm saying? You haven't, you have not walked where I've walked. You know what I'm saying? So.
And on that sort of point about, like people don't understand, like, what it was like and what, like, communities faced. Like, I have sort of, like, a similar story, obviously not from that era, but like, a year ago, I basically created a voguing workshop at my university, Soas, and I wanted to, because I sort of knew about the history and how it centered queer people of color, and I advertised this event just for queer people of color, because I wanted a space where, for once, we were the majority. You wouldn't have to, like, be on guard around, like, white people or, like, cis people, etc. And when I did that, I got so much backlash, and people were like, dances for everyone. How can you just, like, discriminate like that? Like, this is not how you get equality. And it took me by shock, because for me, it was like, I thought they would recognize why this space is needed, but they didn't, right? They didn't even recognize their own positionality. They didn't recognize that their lives are full of privilege, and they can move through life in a way that people from minority groups can't, right? And that, it was like a Facebook comment that someone had written, and it got, like, loads of attention and loads of likes. And it got like 100 likes. And I was like, these are people who I've had classes with liking this comment. And here I am with, like, my intersectional, like, marginalized identity. And it was just so jarring for me. And so I think, like, in terms of, like, who is ballroom for, yes, it's open to everyone, but I think we also need to think, like, who are we actually centering in these spaces? Who are we inviting into these spaces? Who are we putting at the forefront?
Yeah. Now, I'm going to say this. These people that are talking about equality, Kay, if we truly had equality, ballroom would not exist. Mm-hmm. If we truly had equality. You know what I mean? Ballroom would not exist, because we would then, we would all be supported, we would all be supported by our families. We would be, we would all be accepting, and all, you know what I mean? And, we would be, we would be accepting each other and be unified as one big community. You know what I'm saying? There would be no need for it. But because there is no equality, and we go through the certain things that we go through, with our family and people and the people that we interact with. That is why ballroom was created. So it's not so the black sheeps of the family, the people who are not supported. Those are the things that we have in common, and that we were able to come together and create our own lane. And now that we've created our own lane, we now have the same people who pushed us to the side now trying to come into our lane. I can't take it.
I can't take it either, and like that's sort of like the sad reality of like we'll get onto this later, but it's like when things become mainstream, it's like that's when the culture vultures come, right?
Right.
One way that has manifested in a small way is just like the taking of the language and refitting it, repurposing it. And like even like death drop, right? And I know it's going to trigger you, but it's like that has an origin, that has a story. There are names, lives, and contexts attached to that word. And it's completely being disregarded, and it's been changed into something that's more palatable to the tongue of a white straight person. Let's be real, right? So that was a lot, and I feel like it had to be said because these are discussions that need to be had. And I think a lot of people watching this are perhaps not a queer person of color, right? Or like not of trans experience, or not from a low income community. And sort of, if you're coming into this space with privilege, what are you doing to support the communities that really need this, and also pioneered what you're participating in? Like, what does that look like? And I feel like that's a question people need to ask themselves. If they're looking around their scene and it's very white, or it's very middle class, or like the judges panel is very much one demographic, like that is a conversation you need to have, and they need to rectify it, right?
Yeah.
Because again,
fix it.
Exactly. But look around you, like if you're from like Finland, Estonia, Mexico, like obviously the demographic is going to be pretty white, right? Because that's the context of where you are. But those places have marginalized minority groups, right? Who are brown, who are black. And so it's very much, what are you doing to give back, and what are you doing to platform them and support them? Because you're participating in a culture which was created by people who look like them.
Right.
So I'm glad I got that out of the way. I think I go to Soas, and like Soas is very much where you learn about that stuff and you interrogate it, you interrogate your identity, you interrogate the world around you. That's why I'm thankful that I went to Soas. Was like, because before I went to Soas, I was like very much that person who was like, I don't see color, like I just need to work hard and I'll go wherever I want. Right. And it's like, no, there's legit structures up against you, right? And so like if you are privileged, you need to see those structures, you need to see, because I think like a big thing is like the people that pioneered this culture, a lot of them are perhaps still in the same situation, or like the people who descended from the pioneers are in a similar situation. And it's like, through no fault of their own, it's because of the society and the system that we live in. So it's like, it sounds like a big task, but like, what are you doing to dismantle that? And like one aspect that we spoke about was just talking about the history, getting the names, the stories, the lives out there, because they have impact, And so I'm very like, that's why I said to people like at the start, make a note of all the names that you're learning about, because there's context behind every name. And if you're from a place of privilege, you need to know the context of
And ballroom is just gonna, is gonna grow from here. You know what I mean? You see it everywhere. You see it, in commercials and TV shows, and people, it's becoming more and more and more and more visible. And it's so crazy because in the 90s and 80s, this was stuff that we, that we used to, dream about. You know what I mean? Appearing in publications and being on, different shows, being on different shows and things like that. And now it's here. You know what I mean? So, my whole thing is that we have to try our best if you're involved in ballroom to it's very, very, very important that you protect the culture. It's very, 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 very important.
And I think like someone was saying in the question box, they were saying the European ballroom scene doesn't share the same heritage, history, and lived reality as the US scene. In the beginning, it has been a lot of imitation of what we saw on YouTube before we really understood what the culture is about. We unfortunately don't have any elders here in Europe. What advice would Niambi give to the European scene for creating a sustainable and like healthy community? And has there been any lessons or words of wisdom passed down to you that you could pass on to them in terms of like starting it up and making it authentic?
Well, let me tell y'all something. The only thing that I have to say to you, to the international scene, is just keep reflecting and keep learning about the history. That's all you need to do, because the balls and everything that I watch that you provide over there, I want to give the international scene a huge shout out, because a lot of the glitz and the glamour that the US scene had here, you guys have inherited. You know what I mean? Looking back from 1992, how I entered ballroom, when I look at balls over there, that is what I feel. That is how I feel. I feel the excitement. I feel the energy actually through the screen when I look at balls over there. From the venue, from the way that you guys interact with each other, to everybody clapping for everybody and the energy and the applause. That is what ballroom was to me when I first came out. So I definitely want to applaud you guys over there for continuing the legacy. And then we have our ambassadors from over here. Shout out to Jack and Laomi and all of them that come over there and that are teaching the structure and the history of ballroom. You know what I mean? Sanaya and all of them that come over there and teach and everything. You know what I mean? Because that right there, those are the elements right there that keep our scene going. You know what I mean? In a positive way. You know what I mean? In an authentic way.
And I think people should definitely also search on YouTube the Paris Ballroom. I think it's a channel called Paris Ballroom TV or something like that. And they have some really professionally shot their balls.
Oh my god!
And the venues are wonderful, and
it's amazing. It's amazing to see. It truly is.
Check that out. Imani, we're gonna get there. She's asking about your particular Vogue, but we're gonna get there. So now I think we've sort of already gone into this era already. We spoke a bit about it. We went into the years of 92, 93. But just again more broadly, the Black era, which you refer to as the golden era, what changes did ballroom experience compared to the previous era?
Oh my gosh, to be a kid in the Black era. Oh my gosh. I was maybe 14, 15, 16. The Black era had so many things. Femme Queen Face was at its highest height. You had Femme Queen Performance. You had the Sanayas and the Ashleys. I inherited my long life rival, God rest her soul, Yolanda. I love you, sister. I talk about you all the time. That is the Black era was absolutely everything. Just the competition was at its height. It's just indescribable. I mean, you just had to be here. Oh, that's for me. Is that for me? Oh, you can just send it to your.
Let me hand it to you on camera.
Oh, whatever. I need to get it to me on camera. Please. That's right now. But yeah, it was like from everything. Just the ballroom was getting bigger and bigger than just Philly and New York. It was migrating to other places. People were traveling. the competition, and that's one thing that I think that, that we have lost too, is the rival. You know what I mean? Shout out to Dee Dee. She's another rival of mine. You know what I mean? And we've just lost that, especially now that ballroom has grown as the way it is. You know what I mean? You don't know who you're going to battle when you go to a function. But ballroom was so close knit then that you were battling the same people, but you were also honing in on your craft. You know what I mean? And not just at functions, but at the club or mini balls. You had plenty of time to practice your craft. You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the elements that, that we kind of lost along the way, the ability to just marinate. to just marinate and to perfect your craft and become a master in it. You know what I mean? You're not going to get it the first time. You may not even get it the second time. Hell, we've got a whole bunch of underdogs in our scene. You know what I mean? I was one of them. You know what I'm saying? And it's consistency.
Mm.
You know what I mean? If it's something that you're passionate about, you stick with it. You know what I'm saying? And but the black hair was absolutely everything. And just to be young and just please. I mean, no parents. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to glorify that, but
I think I read something as well where someone was reflecting on the 90s and they were like, the best thing is there were like barely any video cameras, like there was nothing captured, like there's no evidence of what you did, so it's like you can get away with anything and just have fun because you don't have to worry about, oh my god, have I been caught by this person, is this going to get leaked, da 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 da.
Right, yeah, there was no like yeah, there was none of that going on, but you wanted to be on camera. Shout out to Caesar and everybody who has actually gotten media out there, for ballroom that has gotten, that has helped get ballroom where it is right now. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to all of them because, I doubt without a lot of that evidence that I would be, who I am right now. You know what I'm saying? With him, cataloging a lot of stuff, a lot of the balls and a lot of the competition. So
just quickly, on that like thing of evidence, I really recommend people to, like, as Niambi said, like Caesar, so that's Ballroom Throwbacks TV on YouTube, and there's some others. There's Ball Voyeurs, there's Sugar Champagne, there's Derek Faces, someone said Kendrick Mugler, but I think Kendrick Mugler's are newer ones, it's not old ones, but definitely the first three that I mentioned, do check them out. I think I found videos from like 1992 or like 1989 is like the earliest video I found.
Yes,
really fun.
Yes.
Luna Ortiz is another one. So as I said at the start, like this is very much a history lesson about like going through the eras. But this is also about getting to know you, Niambi, because you are living history, right? And so this is very much about a biography about you. So, because like, as I said, like I know that you did an interview recently with Courtney. And that was like, I think it's like Conversations with Courtney on YouTube, which I recommend people check out. And that was the first chance I got to actually hear your voice, get to know your story. And like, I think it was like watching videos from like 1997. And now I actually have the opportunity to get to know you and hear your voice, right?
Yeah.
So like, and I think I got a lot of encouragement from watching Courtney's videos because I was like, okay, there's other people out there who are really interested in getting these stories out there, and that gave me a lot of encouragement. And also like Luna and Caesar's videos, I think they mostly stopped around 2014, but they were very much like a spur for me to do this. So it's about you, Niambi, now. So I want to start with, how did you get started in ballroom? Like, where did it begin?
Okay. Shout out to Venus, my first sister, who you're going to be interviewing in 2 days. Y'all check that out too. Venus Mizrahi. She was the one who brought me into ballroom. My gay mother Tanya from up above. She's no longer here with us, but it was me, her, and my gay mother Tanya, and it was just crazy because Venus was maybe 2 weeks older than me, but in ballroom years she was like 50. You know what I mean? To me at the time. You know, you know what I'm saying? Because she had all of the insight, all of the knowledge. She knew how to move around, move and shake and all of that. And, you know, I learned a lot of, like, my whole introduction into ballroom came from her, came from those two. You know, my gay mother also, you know, performed in drag shows, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, that's also another layer of me too. And that was due to her. So they, you know, from me, you know, teaching me how to vogue and, you know, we had the ballroom element and then we had the family element as well. You know what I mean? The basis has always been family with those two women. And, you know, they basically taught me everything that I know. You know what I mean? As far as the scene goes.
And just quickly, a quick shout out. So I'm actually doing an interview with Venus this Sunday. It's going to be 4 p.m. UK time, which I think is like 11 a.m. in the US.
It'll be 11, yeah.
Yeah, so it's an early one, but I definitely recommend checking it out because, as I said, like, it's different people, different stories, different angles, different perspectives. So, like, as I said at the start, like, you can watch this one video right now, me and Niambi, but this is just the start. It's not the end. Like, there's too much in ballroom to say.
Hasan is doing it. Hasan is doing it. I'm telling you, he's doing it.
Thank you, Niambi, for those connections. I'm really excited. And so, just another quick question. So, sort of, like, you are like an icon now, but sort of like, how do you actually go about making a name for yourself? Like, what did that look like for you? Like, from your first sort of time walking until.
It was a long road. It was a long road. My first ball was the Jordan Ball of 1993 in Newark, New Jersey, at the Robert Tree Hotel. Which carries a lot of rich culture because it's right next to New York. So Jersey also, shout out to Jersey. Jersey also has a rich culture in ballroom, being right next door to New York. And I walked Femme Queen performance and I looked a hot mess. I got chopped that first ball. And this was back, let me tell you something. If you get chopped now, it's kind of like on the nice end, like, thank you, baby, have a nice day. Back then, they let you know that you were not it that night. Like, you know, you had bullhorns, gongs, the whole enchilada. You know what I mean? And they are, the judges are like, you know, who is this? You know, they're all looking around like, who is this? And they're sounding off the bullhorn, and I'm still, you know, not even knowing, you know, I'm still going. You know what I mean? It was a long, you know, a hard road of just honing into my craft, being visible, getting out there. You cannot let your nerves get the best of you if you're trying to elevate your name in the scene. Back then, that's all we had. You know what I mean? We didn't have the luxuries of YouTube and all of these things, you know, to even get, you know, insight or learning or whatever. You know what I mean? You know, you guys are very, very fortunate because, you know, we didn't know what we looked like until we watched the VHS tape. you know, so, yeah. You know, and our name was all we had, you know, to build off of. You know what I'm saying? So it was a very long, hard road. And, you know, be prepared for people to say that you're not good. Be prepared for people to say, oh, that's not my cup of tea. You know what I mean? It's not supposed to be easy. It's it's cutthroat. You know what I'm saying? We now call it bullying. Yeah, I was the hell bully. You know what I'm saying? But it wasn't called that then. It was called, you know, things like shade and you know what I'm saying? And it was looked at as normal. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So You cannot you have to have a backbone. You have to have a backbone, and ballroom is not for the weak. It's just not. You know what I mean? Be prepared to be criticized in every element that you think that you're good at. Be prepared to be criticized.
I think like just one story that I just remembered. I remember watching this video. It was like the House of Mugler ball when Rihanna was there. And I only found out the name of the judge after, but it was R. Chanel. And he was like really in there with his light, like torch, like getting into their face and even like touching their face, like pointing at the pimples. And I remember watching it and like people's like reactions, like the comment section on YouTube was like, that's so unnecessary. That's too much. I wouldn't even, who is he to like judge someone's face or like
R. Chanel, that's who the hell he is.
And like,
so, if you know R, you know that is his way of judging. You know what I mean? He chopped me once. I told you that story. He chopped me one time, and I was wounded because I thought I was doing great. And he was like, "What is this? All she's doing is skedaddling up and down the runway one time." And it wasn't until I was ready to go off into oblivion and start crying. You know what I mean? And then. God bless Ashley, honey. She pulled me back on that runway. It was like, bitch, I know you could do better than that. And for somebody that you look up to in the scene to see more in you than you do yourself, that is when I commenced to tearing that floor up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it meant so much to me that she took the time out to be like, listen, I see I see more of you than than what you just displayed. I know that you could do better than that. You know what I mean? So, that moment always sticks out in my mind, especially when it comes to speaking about RR, because he is a very, very, very stern judge. You know what I mean? Ashley is another one that's a very stern judge. And they talk about her, but no, you have to realize what ballroom is. Yeah. It is not for the sensitive. It's just not. And some people can hack it and some people can't.
I remember like reading this comment and it was like, if you're going to step on that stage, like you should be prepared to be judged. Like, and if you don't have the backbone for it, then don't walk on that stage.
Pretty much. Pretty much. And that's what it boils down to. Junior Libation says it in Paris is burning. It takes balls to walk a ball because it does. You know what I mean? You're showcasing yourself. You know what I'm saying? You're showcasing yourself, and it's up to you to show people what you're made of. You know what I mean? You're not entitled to get a judge's 10.
Yeah.
Even a legend, even as an icon, when I walk out there, I don't feel like that I have to show them why. You know what I mean? I have to show them why that I hold the title that I do. You know what I mean? And that's what it's about, because everybody gets, wants to claw and get to this legendary status and icon status, and then once they achieve it, they're like, "Oh, I'm done."
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And it shouldn't be that way. You know what I mean. It should be a constant show and proof. The show and proof should be constant.
And I think like another question I have is sort of like ballroom culture has like a large like demographic of like Black women, like Black trans women, Latinx trans women, and they very much pioneered the scene. And like through my own research, I found like I think I watched a video of Christina, and she was saying like she came into the scene when she was like 12, 13, and like that's when she started her transition within the environment and the context of ballroom as a support structure. And so my question is sort of like what role did ballroom like play in your own journey? Like how did it support you and develop you?
It was everything. Like I was birthed into ballroom. You know what I mean? I didn't have I didn't have a boys stage or a stage where I went into like ballroom was my literal gateway for my transition. And I say this all the time, that if it was not for ballroom, I would have been dead, because there was no other way for me to live the life that I wanted to live at that particular time. You know what I'm saying? So, ballroom definitely saved my life. Everybody has their opinions about ballroom, you know what I mean, and their stigmas or whatever. But for me, it saved my life because I could not live the way that I wanted to live at that particular time. And ballroom was my own gateway.
Mm-hmm. And just sort of like as an extension, like someone asked a question which sort of fits in terms of like that was like the gateway, that was the support. So their question is like, who were the elders that like you looked up to or like were there for you during your ballroom journey?
There's been so many. If I could say, like, even though she was very young, Venus, who you're going to interview on Sunday, she was definitely, an influence over my life, protected me from a lot of things that I would have, gotten into, shielded me from things, and, there's, you're introduced to a lot of things when entering the scene, whether it be positive or negative, but you're also shielded from a lot of things too. And for me, as an adolescent, growing up in the scene as a kid, I could have gotten into a whole lot of shit, but I didn't because I had that support system. Even though I didn't, necessarily get it from my blood family, I did have a family. You know what I'm saying? And, those were the ones. The House of Ebony. Shout out to the House of Ebony. Shout out to the House of Benedini. And shout out to the House of Prodigy. These were families that I was a part of in my journey that, assisted me, in my journey, not necessarily my transition, but my ballroom journey. You know what I mean? They helped me in ways that, if something didn't look right or was out of place, they stepped up to the plate, like, Niambi, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of positive influence. Shout out to Man, who's given me my backbone. You know what I mean? I did not have a backbone. I was very, 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 very timid. You know what I mean? And I could not get anything done being timid. and his influence helped me, it has basically given me the backbone that I have today. Shout out to Prentice, who's my gay father as well, who has given me, the backbone that I have, and, saw a lot of things that I didn't see in myself back then. You know what I mean? So those are some of the people, you know what I mean? All family based though. I always had that family foundation. My drag family too. You know what I mean? Tina Montgomery and my grandmother Andrea. These are all people. The universe places people in your life for a reason. So when life gives you that sign, I don't want to get real spiritual with anybody, but I'm a heavy spiritual person. But when the universe places these people in your life, it's for a reason. Hello, love.
What are you doing?
I'm on an interview right now, love. Say hello.
Hi.
I'm on an interview right now, okay? Where's your game at? Oh, okay. Turn on the light. I knew it, but those are some of the people. Excuse me, I'm going to get something to drink real quick.
No, that's fine. Just while Niambi's gone, so there are a few questions in the chat, and what I'll do is, like, just before we end, I'm going to do like a miscellaneous question section. So like any questions that you have, it could be literally anything. I will basically go through them at the end, and those don't have to be like directly related to like what's currently being spoken about. So just save your questions like for the end.
Hi.
Okay, bye.
Okay. Hi.
And so this is a question I really want to ask you, because obviously most of the clips that I watch of you are like when you were my age essentially, and so I really want to know, like, talk us through like what's it like going to a ball, and specifically like talk us through it. So like your friend has just come up to you being like, hey, you're going to this ball, I just got this flyer. Talk us through it. Like, who is the squad that you're going with? What's the journey there? Where are you going? What are the places?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, the number one thing that you look for when these flyers would come out is who's giving it. because that determines, you know what I mean? Because everything is word of mouth. You know, everything was word of mouth then. So it's like, who's giving it? You know what I mean? Is it a house ball? Is it an individual ball? You know what I mean? And if that person is throwing an individual ball, they must have a name in ballroom. You know what I mean? You weren't going to a ball that said Tiddlywinks Mizrahi on the front. You know what I mean? Just some random, person that has no idea what ballroom is or anything like that. You know what I mean? It was, a person who was throwing a ball. Shout out to Albernian. He has been throwing balls for, at least 30 years now. You know what I mean? And, when you saw like his name on a flyer is giving a ball, or somebody else that was very prominent in the scene, you knew to be at that ball. Or if it was a house ball, which was known as a big ball, you were showing up at that because the who's who of ballroom was going to be there. It wasn't, I think money has a lot to do with the decline of ballroom a little bit, but it was about the trophy and getting your name out there. And you also had things on flyers called scandal sheets, which was a sheet of paper within the flyer that created all of these battles. Like, they would get a whole bunch of people who walked the same category and they would pin them against each other. Like, well, this person get it. And it created the anticipation. You know what I mean? That was the most beautiful thing about ballroom, was the anticipation of it all. It got you excited and prepared, like, oh, I'm going to turn this ball out. You know what I mean? You knew it was coming. There was not a ball every day or every week. There wasn't a ball every 27 minutes. You know what I mean? It was something that you wanted to look forward to attend. You know what I mean? And balls were definitely more spread out. But when you actually arrived at the ball, first of all, you hear the music from way down the block. And that is what got you pumped. You know what I mean? You would see, the who's who, you know what I mean? As a young kid, attending a ball at the Mark Ballroom for the very first time, it was like nothing that I could describe to you. Seeing Octavia being brought out by 6 muscle-bound men, you know what I mean? As a 16-year-old kid, I'm like, I don't know where I'm at or what this is, but I want to be that. You know what I mean?
I want to be that as well. I want to be carried by 6 beefy men. I'm exposing myself.
It was absolutely phenomenal. It was absolutely phenomenal, and like all of the grace and the beauty, and like Femme Queen Face is one of my all-time favorite categories, just because of the glamour involved with it, and the art of competition, and the subtle selling it. You know what I mean? Like it's effortless. Like, you know what I mean? It was just so effortless then. You know what I mean? For the whole era of Femme Queens coming up there, it was just so effortless. You didn't have to do much. You know what I mean? It was so exciting.
And you mentioned like a few names, such as like Ashley, Sanaya, and like, so like, what are some other names from this period that like we should all know?
From the Black era, definitely you should know Dee Dee. Christina, I think, is more of the Red era. I became familiar with her when I first came out. Let me see. Well, Christoph Mika wasn't really transitioned yet. So she was actually the era after mine, even though I think I battled her out before she transitioned around 98. So she came later. But there's so many. Let me see. Oh my gosh, what was her name? Oh my gosh, there's so many to freaking catalog. I don't want my brain to explode. The Mahogany Chanel's, even though I think that she was before me too. Fantasia Revlons. The House of Jordan was really, really, really hot then. In the 90s when I entered ballroom. The House of Chanel. But there's so many individual names. I would be here forever. I would be here forever listening though.
No worries. So another question, like back to voguing now, because again, like that's the hot topic. So I know that like this was the period where like Vogue Femme like really had its sort of like heyday, although it was really coming up. So can you perhaps talk us through like the evolution of like Vogue Femme, because I'm really curious as to like who are like the pioneers of like dramatic performance versus like soft and cut. Like how did that come around? Like what did that look like?
Well, Butch Queen Vogue Femme wasn't split up at first. It was just, a category. And pretty much the dynamics of dramatics didn't come in until later. Basically, all of the Butch Queen Vogue Femmes were sold.
Niambi, your audio, I don't know what happened to your mic, but it's like... it's gone like really kind of squeaky. Yeah, but it's really squeaky. I can hear you, but it's like not the same quality.
Oh. What the hell? No! Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but it's definitely like a different volume to what it was before.
This is insane.
Am I the only one experiencing this? Is anyone else experiencing a difference in the sound?
Hello?
That's much better. That's basically
hello.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything. I don't
know. But you're back. You made it back. So you were saying like Butch Queen Vogue Femme, there wasn't really a distinction.
Yeah, it was like all of the pretty much the majority of the Butch Queen Vogue Femmes, especially when the category first came about, were all soft and cut. Mm-hmm. It was very, very soft because it was not Butch Queen Vogue Femme. It was Butch Queen voguing like a femme queen. Mm. So, you know what I mean? As time went on, that got shortened and condensed, like a lot of the shit does in ballroom, to Butch Queen Vogue Femme. But originally, it was Butch Queen like voguing like a femme queen, and it was just that. It was the Butch Queens that were coming out emulating femme queens. You know what I mean? They had categories, Butch Queen voguing like your favorite femme queen. Yes, thank you, Siora. Butch Queen, bringing like your favorite femme queen, and that is exactly what it is. And then it evolved from that into its own category, as you know, what we now know as Butch Queen Vogue Femme. But definitely some of the names: Eugene Milan, Baby St. Clair, Will Revlon, Kevin Prodigy, the little Kevin, Ebony Prodigy, and y'all know Kevin Prodigy as of now, the commentator and and all of the things. But little Kevin definitely. There's so many. There's so many. Shay Shay Mizrahi, Ray Ray Mizrahi. There's so many names that are associated with that category that have ushered that category in. Back when the Butch Queen Vogue Femmes used to come with the bangles and all of the things, because they were emulating Letitia, who used to have bangles going all up her arms, and she would vogue and stuff like that. So these are definitely a lot of the names that you should become familiar with and do some research
on. And I think like when I type in like Vogue Femme or just like voguing in general, there's this one title that really struck me, and it was like the 90s it girl, like Yolanda Jourdan, and I was just like getting to know Yolanda like through the videos, because her performance is incredible, right? Like she taught people like Alora, and like her legacy is still felt. Like the hair whips, like hairography I associate with Yolanda, and like the painting the nails, which is such an iconic move. It's sort of like I don't see anyone else doing that because it's just so unique to her. And sadly, we lost Yolanda like I think maybe 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. And I remember you saying that like, if Yolanda's sitting on your shoulder and she's like, don't forget to mention me, I want my name on there, and we gotta get that name international, right? So I want you to like just tell us like more about like the life.
Research her. Research Yolanda Jourdan. And the 90s girl wasn't just like a catchphrase for her. She was really the 90s it girl. Before she came along, I thought I was turning it, I was getting my name out there and everything, and then here she comes. She came to Philly and she let me know. You know what I mean? She was very, she was growing her name in New York City around the same time that I was growing my name in Philadelphia. And, she was a breath of fresh air because up until then, I was given, all of this dramatics, because Ashley being one of my, greatest inspirations and stuff like that, I was given all of this dramatics and they needed a break from that. So when she came and, this was before she transitioned into dramatics herself, she was very, very soft and feminine. And they're like, oh, she's so real and all of the things. And it was a break from what I was given. So she came and let me know it in my own city. So I was like, bitch, I got to get you back. So I spent the next 3 or 4 years trying to get her back, and that is what I mean when I say rivalry, because what we had was definitely a rivalry. We would go to balls and battle 3 and 4 times, and people wouldn't know who to give it to, and things are like that. A lot of times our battles sparked fights. You know what I mean? And that is what I mean when I say rivalry. You hone in on that one person that brings out the best in you. You know what I mean? And that is who that was for me. You know what I mean? Every time we got on the floor, it was, I have to give it my all. You know what I mean? And sometimes that might not even be good enough. So, shout out to her. She right here.
And I think Caesar did like an interview with her in 2014. So I really recommend just type in Ballroom Throwbacks, Yolanda Jordan.
Yes, she does. She definitely has an interview up. Yeah.
So we've reached 2 hours, but we still have a few more stuff to do. And I knew we would get here because when I first did my prep with Niambi, we spoke for like 4 or 5 hours. It was getting to like 11 p.m. London time. I was like, I need to just know everything, right? So Niambi has told me that she is able to go over, but we're not going to take the piss, okay? So we're going to move through quickly. But we're giving the people what they need, right? Like this is the history lesson that they need. So thank you so much for being able to go over time.
And thank you everybody for coming on here and watching this. Like really, like this really means a lot to me. That you guys showed out for this. It's great. Thank you so much.
And we still have like over 100 people still watching live. So thank you. So that was sort of the black era, the golden era. And now we move into sort of like 2000s, like up into like maybe like 2010. So sort of at the end of the 90s, what changes did ballroom experience?
The inception of dramatics performances at its all-time high. You had the split with between Vogue Femme. You had the soft and con and the dramatics, and it just ushered in a whole new era of talent. From the Mikas to the shout out to Alora, shout out to Deja, shout out to all of these wonderful performers that have changed the game, that have truly changed the game with performance, and really kind of evolving. You know what I mean? Because it was truly all about the evolution. You know what I mean? Of not just performance but ballroom in general. You know what I mean? And another life lost too soon, Alora. Oh my gosh, I'm that's another one that I miss so much. And I often imagine on how she would integrate, how she would be like. She would be just the epitome of everything right now. She was still here. You know what I mean? She's definitely one who has changed the game. you know, has changed the game as far as performance goes. And you know, it just, the blue era has definitely just you know, ushered in more talent. And I also don't want to forget our women in our trans men too. They have been staples in our scene. They have brought incredible talent to our scene. You know, from the mothers to fathers to the kids, you know, our women and trans men have definitely kept our, you know, scene together as well. You know what I'm saying? You know, but yeah, the blue era definitely brought in a lot of talent.
Hmm. I think Alora's videos are honestly like, I watch them and I'm like, how is she not broken her ankle, broken her back, broken her neck? But she's on that floor, she's back up. She's on that floor, she's back up. It's really incredible to watch. And like, I think like like a word that I always sort of like come across is like blueprint. And like, I very much see like Alora's style like as a blueprint, right? And then people that came before her, it's like Yolanda taught Alora, and then like before Yolanda there was Ashley, and it's sort of like understanding like how things evolved and also knowing the names of that evolution. I think that's really beautiful to just be able to continue that. And you're right, if Alora was still here, oh my god. Imagine.
Forget it. Mm-hmm. Forget it. I saw somebody ask a question about the color coded eras. I just believe that was just created to have some type of structure. Because you know, a lot of times in ballroom, like ballroom was just something that was just like all over the place, and you know, it definitely. Oh, wait a minute, the era color time period. This was done by Derek Prada Ebony, and that's right. So just look at the previous the previous comment. But yeah, that's absolutely right. And just to create some type of structure and time span and kind of separation between the time spans too, so you can kind of get a feel of how, you know, how ballroom has progressed.
Mm-hmm. And just quickly, like for the people that won't be able to see the comments, like if they're watching on YouTube in the future, as I said, 20 years from now, let me just quickly read out that comment. So the era, color, time span, this was done solely by Derek Prada Ebony. He came up with an idea to separate generations into a color scheme. This is solely his point of view. Keep in mind that there are no specific rules in ballroom today. Therefore, people have the liberty to make changes, and sometimes those changes grow and expand like wildfire, and sometimes those ideas fail or are rejected by the ballroom community. So if you're watching this in 20 years' time, like, let us know in the comments what it's like. Ballroom is an evolution.
Maybe I'll be 62. I'll be 62 and still do.
I told you I'm gonna be booking Niambi for like decades to come. You'll be sitting on all my panels. Niambi was saying like she doesn't really like to judge, but Niambi, you're judging. If I ever get to that stage where I can host or facilitate a ball, I'm making sure you're on that panel. And just quickly, so sort of, I know that the house that you're currently in, like the House of Prodigy, and you were saying that was started in like, I think it was 2002. And I'm just really curious to sort of know like, what is that, like what makes the House of Prodigy like unique? What is the character of that house? What was it like back in 2002?
Okay, well, let me just say, shout out to the House of Prodigy. The House of Prodigy was originally the Philadelphia chapter of the House of Ebony. So, you know, basically, since my inception in ballroom, the House of Ebony was the house that I spent the longest amount of time in. Even though I had, had left and came back. But the longest amount of time that I've ever spent inside of a house. And the father at the time, man, who was also my gay father, broke off from the House of Ebony and created the House of Prodigy, which will reach its iconic status next year. So, congratulations to them. And it's always been about family, tough love, And that was one of the things that made me grow as, as an individual, as well as within a family unit, and being in the house was, a lot of that tough love. You know what I mean? Hearing the things that I might not necessarily want to hear at that moment, but needed to hear them. You know what I mean? And man has definitely been that for me over the years. Like since I was a kid, he's been that for me. He's been that stern, firm father figure that I so needed in my life that I didn't have. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And that's why I gravitated so much towards him. And in a lot of ways, I am like him. But the way that I speak and the way that I put things out there unapologetically, I get a lot of that from him. But yeah, it's always been about unity. Even when we were Ebony's, it was always about unity from dressing alike and just being a cohesive family unit. You know what I mean? That's what it's always been about, from the beginning, and with Prodigy, it's no different.
And someone said, Niambi, can you come to Germany? And I will answer that for you. So what I'm going to say to that person is book her flight, get her hotel sorted, get some dates sorted post-pandemic, and she will be in Germany. She can do a voguing lesson. She can do a history lesson. She can judge your panel, right?
And I can visit my uncle because he lives over there.
Bring these legends, bring these icons over to Europe. Like, yeah. I bet post-pandemic, like, flights are going to be cheap, I don't think they're going to be too expensive. So accommodate that, make space for that, and make it happen. These people are still here. These legends, these icons are here.
Yeah.
And just before we get into the miscellaneous questions from the audience, I just want to ask: is there anything that you yourself want to shout out, something that you've done, or a business, or anything?
Okay, I've been a busybody, so give me a minute. Well, I've done the interview with Courtney. I've also done an interview with the lovely Toni Bryce. You can research that. You can research that on my page or the NASM Inc. Facebook page. That's NAESM. I also did an interview with her. So you'll be this is my third interview. Oh, she's fancy. I have Learn Your History, as everybody knows. I have I've Learned Your History. I do spiritual readings as well. The NBC spiritual readings. The Niambi Prodigy Designs. I also do graphic design and website creation. I have trans information, your place for everything trans, news articles, things of that nature. I have a weekly show, Trans Talk Tuesday. That's every Tuesday at 12:30 in the afternoon, Eastern time. I have no idea what time that would be over there, but every Tuesday. And if you don't catch it, you can always catch the replay on my Facebook page, which is the new Niambi Stanley. I can be found there. Let's see what else. LGBTQ Wall Street. Which highlights LGBTQ plus people in business. And I also have Black Trans Enterprise Inc., which I just got incorporated. I'm very excited about that, which helps find jobs for LGBTQ plus people in our technology era. So yeah, she's been busy.
So that was quite a lot there. So someone has kindly written it all out in the chat. And when I upload this later to YouTube, so if you're watching this on YouTube, click the event description. There will be links there. And hopefully those links are still working in 30, 40 times, 40 years, whenever you click it, right? Fingers crossed. And I just want to quickly invite everyone now to sort of just ask, in the chat, all the questions that you had, anything you want to know, anything that wasn't covered. People were asking questions previously, but I need to scroll up loads. So please resubmit your question. Quickly quickly go through them. I think my question, or something I'm really curious about, well, I already know the answer, but I want people to know it. Is I really want you to talk us through, like, so a lot of people associate it with, like, well, they call it a death drop, but it's not. And like, can you tell, like, that specific dip, like, what is the name for that specific dip? Like, how did that dip come about? Who are the names that we need to know?
Okay, it's not a death drop. It's not a death drop. It's not a shawam. It's none of these things that you have heard by people who are, are appropriating the culture and trying to adapt these things. It's called a dip, and the kind of dip that it's called the Mecca elf. It was invented by Mysterious Dior, who is no longer here with us, along with Ashley Icon, who still is here with us. Those two together invented this dip.
Wait, Niambi, your audio, it sounds like you're underwater. Maybe like shake your laptop again like you did last time.
All right, hello?
No, it's still a bit like no.
No. I swear. Goodness gracious with the sound. Hello? Is that
it's not back. It's not back yet to how it was.
all right, how about now?
I mean, I can hear you, but it's obvious. It's just different to how it sounded before.
But this technology,
but I can still hear you, and I think people can still hear you. So if you're watching on YouTube, just turn your volume up.
Well, I am getting a ton of messages. I think I have people that are inboxing me too, so I think they might have something to do with it too. But hopefully we can get through this. All right, how's now? Yes, no, maybe so.
I mean, it's audible. Like, we can hear you, we can make it out, so it's fine. So yeah, as you were saying, like Mystery Dior, Ashley.
Yes, Mystery Dior and Ashley were the inventors of the Mecca Elegant. It is not called the death drop. It's not called the shawam. Forget about what you see on Drag Race. That is not authentic ballroom. That is, whatever it is. But it's, excuse me. You have a couple people, name drop a few names. That doesn't make you totally conscious of what ballroom is. You know what I mean? You really have to do the research and, and realize why these things happen and why we have what we have now. You know what I mean? And it's, because of the painting for us.
Mm-hmm. And just another quick question. This is sort of related. But someone's asking about what are the Niambi Prodigy signature Vogue moves? Particularly.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of people that can tell you better than I can. Only because, like, when I go out there, it's whatever I'm feeling at the time. You know what I mean? If I'm angry, I'm in like battle mode. I'll vote a little bit more angrily. If I'm in a light, happy, good mood, I'll look happy, basically smiling a lot. But other than that, it's wherever the music takes me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And for me, the true art form is like unplanned. You know what I mean? That unplanned role. Like every now and then I'll get on my platform and I'll just, play some music, and wherever it takes me, that's where it takes me.
I think like what I see is one of your like iconic moves, and this is what that same person has also acknowledged, is like your matrix into a dip. Do you remember I was talking to you and you were like, you need to contour your body, and then do you remember?
Yeah, and that's it. I do that a lot, and that's when when I know the beat is coming. Like if the person that's listening doesn't know that it's coming, but I know that it's coming. That's when I'm listening, and I'll know. I know that it's coming, so I'll jerk my body like that.
and it looks easy, but when I tried it, I was like, yeah, my body's not moving how she moves. And just quickly going through the questions. So someone has asked, Are there any age limits in ballroom? So have they missed the fun if they're in their 30s and didn't get involved?
No, there's no age limits in ballroom. I'll just say, all I'll say is if you want to, enter ballroom, be prepared to have a tough skin, and it's not going to be, it's going to be a bumpy ride. You know what I mean? And make sure that it's something that you're really passionate about. Now, with the exception of the kiki scene, that's something that is for, that's supposed to be for, for the youth that are, coming up to get them prepared for ballroom, which we didn't have coming up. You know what I mean? We were in, we wanted to be in ballroom. We were in ballroom 14, 13, 15, 16 years old. You know what I mean? Thank goodness for the kiki scene and kind of like Brian, to be able to cross over into the mainstream element. You know what I mean? But no, there's no age limits in ballroom.
And someone else has asked about, can you talk about Octavia's influence on you? And is there anything we should know about Temperance Saint Laurent?
Well, Temperance Saint Laurent, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting Temperance Saint Laurent. I've only seen photos of her. Very, very, very gorgeous. And I know she was very, very close to Octavia. However, I haven't had the pleasure of spending personal time with Octavia, when she lived in Philadelphia for an amount of time. And all I can say is just, wow, like she not only for her beauty but her intellect as well. She is a person that thought on a whole other plateau than the average person, and she knew her power and knew her worth and had no problem explaining to people what her worth is. You know what I mean? And was unapologetic about it, and that was one of the main things that I loved about her so much. I even got an opportunity to almost walk a ball with her. But at the last minute we backed down and it was like, no, we saw the competition and we were like, no. So I ended up voguing. That's when I had that infamous battle with Alyssa, because we did me and Octavia did walk together. But those are some of the memories that I'll cherish for the rest of my days. So yeah.
Also, your audio has like miraculously improved. Like it just went back to how it was originally, which is really good. So
I swear I'm not doing anything. I don't know.
Exactly, you were just sitting there. You didn't even have to shake anything. Also, very pertinent question. Someone has asked, how can we donate to you? Like, what's your PayPal or Cash App or Venmo?
Yes. Well, for PayPal is Niambi Stanley. That's my personal PayPal. But if you would like to donate, Black Trans Enterprise Inc. also has a Square Square donate link, which is bit.ly /Black Trans Enterprise Inc. The B is capitalized, the T is capitalized, the E is capitalized, and the I is capitalized. So it's bit.ly /Black Trans Enterprise Inc. And you can donate there. Thank you, Fiora. The first I should be a Y though. It's bit.ly. But thank you, girl. I love you.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, maybe in like 20 years to come, it will be in the event description. So Niambi, don't change any of that, because in 30 years time,
I'm not touching anything. That's all you. That is all you.
$50 is gonna come through, and you're gonna be like, "Why am I getting $50? What happened? Oh, someone's watching a video from 2021. Now it's 2024."
I'm not touching anything.
I'm probably just gonna do a few more, and then we're gonna like go to a surprise. So, and again, like Niambi is available like on Facebook Messenger or like via Learn Your History on Facebook Messenger. So if you have any additional questions, just like feel free to reach out to her.
Yes.
So someone has asked, in terms of the word performance, what does that sort of encapsulate? So like, is it very much performance is just like Vogue Femme, or like particular elements of voguing, or is performance like what's under the bracket of performance?
Well, I mean, you know, like okay, and that kind of like ties in with the whole like elements thing, too, with voguing. Like when I was taught about voguing, you know, like I wasn't like taught like, you know, like what different elements were. Um, I wasn't taught about what different elements were. Elements were just a way of describing you beginning in voguing. You know what I mean? It was something to as you're just starting out. You know what I mean? Just something to just a reference tool, if you will, to just starting out. It was never something that that you had to do, or you know, it wasn't something that was you know, it wasn't something that you had to do or that was required of you. You know what I mean? In order to be voguing. You know, that stuff came later, but yeah, you know, the way I started voguing was just like, you know, just let the music feel you. And just like I said before, we had plenty of outlets to be able to practice and hone in on our craft. You know what I mean? We had the club and all of that. So it was never anything that was that was required of you to do as far as elements. But as far as performance goes, it's just another another word for voguing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, you have there's a lot of people that say that you have voguers and you have performers. Performers actually take you through a journey, and voguers are just voguing just to the movement. You have some people that say that, but I don't know. They're just people.
I think just like one final question. I think this is actually something that we spoke about at length when we did our prep like a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it's about, what's your opinion on how femme queens are treated today in the scene compared to back then?
Wow. There's no, like, I just feel that the femme queens, trans women in our scene, like the respect has just gone. And it really, really, really bothers me because of us being the ones who pretty much are the foundation of it. And it's so crazy. I saw this ball, I think it was like the Alpha and Omega ball or something that Caesar had going on in New York. And Alyssa came out, and I was just like, remember a time where, you know, these certain figures in ballroom used to hit the floor, and people were going like bonkers crazy, jumping up and down and throwing things and just being really, really manic about it. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she's here. And all of that. And it's like, now when these prominent figures that are still here with us get on that floor, it's like people are like doing other, like going off doing other shit. Like they're like, oh, who's this? And they're like, there's no respect for them at all. And they paved the way for you to be. You know what I'm saying? For us to still be having balls now all these years later. You know what I mean? They were there with the biscuits and gravy of the scene, and you're just like, oh child. You know what I mean? And that is what bothers. You know what I mean? And that is what brought me to the point to constantly teach about our history. You know what I mean? In the scene, because of the disdain for our trans women in our scene. And I don't think that that's right. And that's something that needs to change.
And Siora said in just the comments, cis gay men are pushing the girls out, and we are totally not safe in some spaces. Just call it what it is. It needs to stop.
Yep. And I totally agree with her. That's my Libra sister. I totally agree with her. You know what I mean? And anytime a trans woman can be so revered in our scene, but go to a ball now and have to feel for her life, there's something wrong with that. Point blank. There's something wrong with that. You know what I mean? The respect needs to return. You know what I mean? To our trans women in our scene. There's no reason why I should see a gay man freaking fighting a trans woman after a ball. Like, never. But I see it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's unfortunate. And we can't keep being out here, you know, requesting monies from these organizations for ballroom and all these things. We need to repair ourselves first. We just do. We have to repair ourselves first. And once we are repaired, then we can start requesting, you know, requesting these things and you know, showing people what our worth really is. Because we need to realize what our own worth is first.
Yeah. And I think, like, when you were talking about how, like, that particular example where, like, Alyssa came on and then just, like, compared to, like, the 80s, 90s, like, the hype or the response just wasn't there.
Oh my God, it wore me out. I was so aggravated that whole day.
I think, like, I remember before I knew who Alyssa was, I watched a video of her walking, just like LSS at a latex ball. I want to say, like, 2016 or 2018, between those years. And obviously, as I was watching, I was just like, oh, who is this? Like, I didn't really matter. I didn't really care about it. But then when I found out who she was, then I rewatched it and I was like, hold the fuck up. That's Alyssa LaPerla. Like, why the fuck are people not going up? And I was just like, I should be in that fucking audience. Get these people out there who are just watching, like, not respecting, like, what they see before them. And I think, like events like this, like, where you're sort of sharing the history, like, and letting people know the names who are then going to go out and search these names. Like, Alyssa LaPerla, or, like, before, you might find videos under Alyssa St. Clair. Like, that's something you should search up, you know? Yeah. It very much is a blueprint.
Yes. You know what I mean? And I was truly disheartened. Like, it really struck a chord with me that the respect was just not there. You know what I mean? Even when I think Octavia was walking face one time, and you know, she came out. I believe she came out with a totally bald head, and people were just like looking. Like, I'm like, are y'all insane? Like, and there's no respect. They're like, there's little to no respect for the history and the culture and the way these people have paid. You know what I mean? In our scene. And it's crazy. It's like you get to a certain age in the scene, you're looked at as old, you're looked at as bitter, you're looked at as all of these freaking things. You know what I'm saying? And it's disgusting. Instead of paying homage and respect to the experience that these people hold and the stories that these people can tell, that can be passed on for generations to keep our scene intact and moving forward. You know what I mean? It's very disappointing. It's very disappointing. But as long as I have breath in my body, I'm always talking about the history. So.
And I think I know that, like, a lot of people watching are from, like, the European ballroom scene. And, like, as we said, like, these people are still around. You can find Alyssa on Instagram. Like, just type in, like, Cartier Alyssa. It will come up. Like, look at Niambi's friend list. It will come up. And, like, reach out to these people. Like, fly them over once this pandemic is over. Invite them for a history lesson or a teaching lesson, or to judge your panel. Like, look at the panels that you have in the ballroom space that you're going to, and if there's not, like, trans representation on there, particularly from that generation, then you need to ask yourself, is that right? You know, and it obviously isn't.
Right. Or ask yourself, why should I even be having this ball?
Exactly. Like, how can you have a ball and then have no representation of the people who literally created the foundation for you to even have that ball, right?
Yes. Yeah. Shout out to Noel Archives too. Shout out to Noel Archives on Instagram. You have been you have been really, really, really contributing to my comfort of nostalgia. So thank you, sister. Thank you for all of the videos that you posted of me and all of my sisters and brothers in the ballroom scene from back in that era. I applaud you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
So there's still loads of questions, but as I said before, like, people if you have a question that was unanswered, you can message Niambi on Facebook. Just type in
Yeah, New Niambi E. Stanley on Facebook. New Niambi E. Stanley on Facebook. Niambi is 10 on Instagram. You can find me on there, inbox me, and I don't mind. I have time.
Again, so much love is coming through the chat section. And if you're watching this on YouTube, like years later, again, like reach out to Niambi, even if it's like 2042, right? And I say 2042 and I put it 20 years from now because I was watching videos of Niambi from 30 years ago. So like, wow. the YouTube archive will always be there. So I just want to say thank you everyone for coming. We still have over like 80 people still here, like 2 hours and 40 minutes later.
Oh my God.
Because of like you, Niambi, like what you have to offer, like, it's resonated with so many people. And Niambi, are there any like final words that you want to say to all the people that will be watching now and in the future?
I'm going to try not to get emotional, but trans lives matter, okay? And I'm taking all of the catchphrase and a lot of the appropriation around that and all of that out of the equation. Trans lives matter. Support your trans people. Give trans people the same opportunities that everybody else in the world is afforded effortlessly. If I could say anything, I would just say that. Trans lives matter. Our trans women, our Black trans women, you know what I mean? I use of color, to create inclusion, but these are our Black trans women that are out here being murdered. No one else. So I need to have some respect around that, some sensitivity around that, and let's create change together to keep this from happening. There's already been 6 this year already. We're already in February. There's something wrong with that. And we need to change that. So follow me on all of my stuff. Thank you, Hasan. Thank you, Soas University Students Union. This has been wonderful. I'm in a good mood, so I might have the aftermath on my page. I might do a little thing. I'll be able to hear the music, so I might go a little live a little later today. So that'll be a little extra treat for y'all. But thank you so much, Hasan. This has been wonderful, and I can't wait to see you do great, fantastic things, my darling.
Honestly, it's been like such an honor to just have this moment with you, because it's really surreal to be able to just watch videos of someone and see their progression through life, and now have the opportunity, like on YouTube, and now have the opportunity to actually speak to them. And once this pandemic is over, I'm coming to wherever you are based. I'm gonna sleep on the sofa or the couch, or whatever you call it. And I'm going to drag you to a ball, and I'm going to sit, I don't know, maybe I can get like a VIP seat with you, or like the House of Prodigy table or something. Yeah. I'll be an honorary member for that one day.
So you're asking me to mention my PayPal again. My personal PayPal is paypal.me/Niambi E. Stanley. That's paypal.me/Niambi E. Stanley. And you can find me there. All of my stuff will come up. Yes, thank you, Seora, so much. My guiding light. I love you. Shout out to her. She's doing wonderful things in Pittsburgh, in my state, by the way. I love her. She is who I look to, for inspiration in my activism and the things in my advocacy, things that I'm involved in. So, shout outs to her, and shout out to all of my inspirations at Ballroom for the last 30 years. And hopefully 30 more once this pandemic is over. But Thank you again, Hasan, so much.
And just for all the people watching, as much as we love her, thank you. Like, do send some coin to Niambi's PayPal because she does have.
That was so subtle.
She has businesses set up which supports like the Black trans community, and like your money does go directly to supporting that community. So as much as we love her, thanks. Like you have coin, like. I'm sure there's some like white middle class people in here, and when we're talking about privilege and positionality, like this is what giving back to the community looks like. So we love it, thank you. But if you've got coin, and you know where to send it.
Yes.
So, thank you. I'm gonna leave it there, and I'm actually gonna type you up on Facebook. Watch your aftermath in like 5 minutes or so. So you got to do it now. I'll be watching.
Yes,
Again,
immediately after this is over, I'm going straight on.
I remember everyone watching, this is just like the beginning. Like you can't fit everything that Ballroom has into 2 hours or 3 hours, which this nearly is. So search the names that we mentioned. Come to the one on Sunday with Venus Mizrahi, and hopefully going to do more. Because again, this is just the beginning. And share this. Once this is released, share it with your communities across the world.
Yes, share. Yes. Visibility is key.
So we got a lot of thank yous coming through. So I'm gonna end it here and say thank you so much. And let's go over to Niambi's Facebook for the aftermath.
Let's go. Aftermath. See you later.
Bye. Bye everyone.
Bye.